Hi, my name is Brenda Molina, and today I am presenting for my Business 200 class. I will be talking about two different things, which are structure and human resource. I will be talking about reframing organizations from chapters 3 to 8, which explain what is structural and human resources. I will also provide examples of how structural and human resources are established in organizations. In Chapter 3, we talk about getting organized. I'll provide an example that the book has provided me. It has helped me understand because it provided us an example that consisted of team effort and close coordination. This example is about an 8-oar racing team that had a close coordination and wielded about 8 rowers, and each team member played a different part in rowing. The leader knows everyone's strengths and weaknesses, and they also plan a strategy, which they also understand how to fix situations when things happen. Now, a group of young men from Chicago became a functioning racing crew that competed against teams from white schools. Most of them never learned to swim or even row a boat. But the only reason why they competed in this competition was because they were attracted to the traveling, the food, and they managed to overcome this fear to make a well coordinated team to master the special skills of racing. In any organization, large or small, structure is vital to success. Let's say a company like Amazon, founder Jeff Bezos, he is very passionate about structure and process because he delivers whatever the customer wants with speed and precision. Just like him, he measures and monitors employees' performance and observes behavior closely to see what steps or movements can be improved in efficiency. Bezos makes it clear that his customer is number one. Communication and coordination is very important in an organization. Let's take a look at the 9/11 tragedy that many heroes sacrificed themselves and saved other people's lives. In the 9/11 tragedy, the breakdown of communication and coordination caused the death of 121 firefighters who died when the North Tower collapsed. This is because police helicopters alerted police of the building that was going to collapse, but they had no way to get in contact with the fire department. If they had the proper communication and coordination during that time, things could have been different. The right mixture of strategy, roles, relationships, and coordination is essential to collective performance. The right structure combats the risk that individuals, however talented, will become confused, ineffective, or hostile. The three important key questions to ask yourself is: what is our overall strategy? How do we allocate responsibilities across different units and roles? How do we meld diverse efforts in a pursuit of common strategy? So, for structural assumptions, the structural perspective advocates pointing people in the right direction, defining them jobs or how they work together. There are 6 assumptions that are in the structural frame, which is: 1, organization exists to achieve established goals and objectives and devise strategies to reach their goals. 2, they increase efficiency and enhance performance through specialization and appropriate division of labor. Third, they are suitable forms of coordination and control to ensure that diverse efforts of individuals and units are met. Fourth, organizations work best when rationality prevails over personal agendas and pressures. The fifth one is: effective structure fits an organization's current circumstances and strategies, technology, workforce, and environment. The last one is: when performance suffers from structural flaws, the preferred remedy is problem solving and restructuring. The structural view has two principal intellectual roots, which is: 1, the work of industrial analysts bent on designing organization for maximum efficiency. One being Frederick W. Taylor. He founded an approach that is labeled scientific management, which he broke tasks into small parts and retrained workers to get most from each and time that they spend at work. The second one is a pioneer of structural ideas were the German economist and sociologist Max Weber, which Weber described monocratic bureaucracy as an ideal form that maximized efficiency and norms of rationality. Weber's model consisted of a fixed division of labor, a hierarchy of offices, and a set of rules governing performance. They separate a personal from official property and rights and use technical qualifications for selecting and promoting personnel employment as a primary occupation and long term career. Henry Mintzberg provided us the 5 P's in strategy, which is plan, perspective, pattern, position, employ. With planning comes a conscious and intentional course of action. Perspective is an organization's way of framing where it wants to go and how it intends to get there. The pattern is a consistent form of decisions, and position is the way an organization positions itself in relationships to its environment. Lastly, ploy is a plan or decision whose purpose is to provoke a reaction from competitors. The Mintzberg 5 P's focuses on thinking while others are more about actions. All of the elements are a coherent strategy. Now, Roberts say that general managers define strategies that involve objectives, statements, specifications and competitive advantage, and logic for success. Chandler noted in 1962 that structure follows strategy. Now, he says a good strategy needs to be specific, enough to provide direction, but enough to adapt to changing circumstances. In structural forms and functions, structure provides the architecture for pursuing an organization's strategic goals because it is a blueprint for expectations and exchanges among managers, executives, employees to the customers, competitors, and clients. Structure both enhances and constrains what an organization can do. But who is responsible for managing the new employee and how much discretion is the new person will have to make home front decisions. Every successful company evolves itself in a unique combination of strategic and structure. Sometimes tighter structure is better, but sometimes it is not. Equating structure with rigid bureaucracy confuses two very different kinds of machines, which is one, those who design to de-skill work, and two, those designed to leverage users' skills. So, the book talks about how recent years they've seen remarkable things that in designing structures that emphasize flexibility, participation, and quality. They see dramatic changes in technology, information, and how the business environment have rendered old structures at an unprecedented rate, spawning a new interest in organizational design. In structure, there are 2 issues with the design, which is how to allocate work and how to coordinate diverse efforts after giving out responsibilities. It is very important to settle issues concerning who does what, when, and what gets done, as how individual efforts mesh to ensure harmony. So, every living system creates a specialized roles to get important work done. It's somewhat like, let's say, ants or bees. They are like a colony where small workers spend most of the time in the nest, and the large workers are very powerful. We can call that like the queen bee or something. So, a job or position channels behavior by prescribing what someone is to do or not to do by accomplishing them a task. Prescriptions take the form of job descriptions, procedures, routines, protocols, or rules. But once an organization spells out its position or roles, managers have a second set of key decisions on how to group people into working into units, and they have basically several many options, which is one, function, two, time, three, product, four, customer, five, place, six, process. So the function is groups based on knowledge or skills. The product is groups organized by what they produce. The customers is group established around a customer or clients. And place is about the group such as regional or interpersonal offices. The process is grouping by a flow of work, and organizations use two methods to make individual and group efforts with system wide goals, which is vertically and laterally. So, vertically is a formal chain of command, and laterally is basically meetings, committees, network structures, and so on. With vertical coordination, it is often efficient, but not always effective because it depends on the employee's willingness to follow directions from above. More decentralized and interactive lateral forms of coordination are needed to keep down control from stifling initiative and creativity. Lateral coordination is usually more effective but costlier because of its vertical counterparts, such as the labor that considers function, time, product, customer, clients, place, and process, while the coordination is in vertical, it's authority, rules, planning, and in lateral, it's meetings, task forces, coordinating roles, matrix structures, and networks. Overall, the structural frame looks beyond individuals to examine the social architectures of work. If structure is overlooked, an organization usually misdirects energy and its resources. It could fire managers and bring in new ones, but they will fall into the same category as the other managers because the structural flaws are doomed in their organization. The organizational design are the twin issues of differentiation and integration. They have to be used both vertical and horizontal to mesh out the elements together. And the right structure depends on prevailing circumstances that considers an organization's goals, strategies, technology, people, and environment. In Chapter 4, we talk about structure and restructuring. Chapter 4 concludes of an organizational structure that represents its best efforts to align internal activities with outside pressure and opportunity. Basically, managers work and juggle to resolve organizational dilemmas by asking themselves if they are too loose or too tight. The structure represents a resolution of contending claims from various groups. Henry Mintzberg differentiates five major components in an organizational structure, which is strategic apex, middle management, operating core, technostructure, and support staff. This design creates a unique way, as is machine bureaucracy, professional bureaucracy, simple structure, divisionalized form, and autocracy. Structural change produces confusion and resistance, but things get worse before they get better. It just depends on how well the new model aligns with environment, task, and technology. Effective restructuring requires a fine assessment of typical problems and an overall sense of structural options. Putting the most talented people in a confused or inappropriate structure is a route to failure. In Chapter 5 of Reframing Organizations, we talk about organizing groups and teams. In the beginning of this chapter, they set out an example such as the SEAL team that has provided us a example of how a team is supposed to be. They basically had assaulted Osama bin Laden, and when the President Obama had asked them who shot the last shot, they all concluded that they all did. This is teamwork. And basically, teamwork is a diverse of individuals that typically work at a distance from the existing hierarchy that basically small teams have ability to produce results that often elude the grasp of large organizations. Much of the work in organizations do get done by groups and teams, and they elevate performance in an ordinary individual to extraordinary heights. When teams don't work together, this can be bad because it can have potential contribution to the even most talented members of the organization. This is why teams have to work together because if they don't, they can bring other people down. The performance of small group depends heavily on the structural design and clarity. So, the appropriate blueprints of roles and relationships align with tasks and goals or missions. The key startup challenge for the teams is analyzing the job at hand and dividing the structural arrangements needed to get done. They have to clarify expectations and they're open in meetings to get better results. So, groups choose among a range of options to develop a structure that maximizes individual contribution while minimizing problems that plague small groups. This provides a key to shaping group structure, and tasks vary in complexity, predictability, and clarity. There are some fundamental team configuration which consist of one boss, dual authority, simple hierarchy, and circle network, as well as all channel network. So, the one boss is basically information and decision flow from the top. They basically have arrangement when one person has authority over others. The group members offer information and communicate primarily with the official leader only. With the second one is the dual authority. They create management level between the two bosses, and two individuals have authority over specific areas in the group of work, and they reduce the boss's span of control, freeing him time to concentrate on mission, strategy, or relationship with higher ups. The simple hierarchy is a middle manager who reports to the boss and in turn supervises and communicates with others. This arrangement is like at the White House, where the president is free to focus on the mission and external relationships while leaving the operational details to the chief of staff. As for the circle network, it is where information and decision flows subsequently from one group member to another. This design relies slowly on lateral coordination and simplifies communication. For the all channel network, it is a final possibility that sets up what small group researchers call an all channel start network. This is like it's like a star where they all communicate with each other, and it's like a design similar to the Team 6 SEAL operation, and they basically have information that flows freely, and this sometimes requires to touch many different parts of groups, and they work best when team members bring well-developed communicational skills, enjoy participation, embrace diversity, and are able to manage conflict. We now talk about chapter 6, which is part of the human resource. This chapter talks about people and organization. I like how this chapter starts off because it begins by talking about being careful about wanting to be a manager or having a manager career. I want to be a manager, so I want to begin to talk about why they say this. Gruber says a high percentage of white collar workers experience spiritual violence because of the work is pointless in, pardon my language, bullshit jobs. How this compares to managers? Well, white collar workers aren't eager enough to go to work. They don't get much appreciation while they're there and have trouble getting everything done. They doubt that their work makes much of a contribution, and it's the same thing for well paid managers and professionals because they deal with oppressive hours, they deal with competition, they deal with um, culture, and they deal with like an underlying sense that their work isn't enough. And this can bring a heavy emotional toll, high stress, job insecurity, long hours, and lack of control that can lead to illness and death. An example that I'll set out is Amazon. Amazon went under investigation when workers in an eastern Pennsylvania warehouse were passing out in 100-degree weather in their warehouse. An investigation took place of this and the company installed air conditioning systems. Another example that I could provide of the same company, Amazon, was in during the COVID-19 pandemic, the demand for their services skyrocketed and so did for the employees' fear of the virus. They were dissatisfied with the company's response that they were expanding hiring in the face of employee protests, sickouts, and union organizing effort. They raised wages and took steps to protect health, which wearing masks, taking temperature, providing hand sanitizer and wipes. They fired activists who protested the company's failure to provide enough protection against this pandemic. And the vice president was so incensed on the firings that he resigned in a very public protest as well. Exploitation of workers is increasing, and marginal groups such as migrant workers are particularly vulnerable. One example in the book, the migrant worker said, they are nothing and they are less than a dog because they have nothing. While I see what they are trying to say, I also have people in my family that aren't like from here and they feel the same way because they don't have anybody to like work for or have any documentation to provide them to work, so they feel like they are nothing. The human resource frames consist of two views, one, it being unjust, and two, it is a bad psychology. People argue that skills, attitudes, energy, and commitment are vital resources that can either make or break an enterprise. These frames are built on the core assumptions that highlight an organization that exists to serve human needs, people and organizations needing each other. When the fit between individual and system is poor, both or one will suffer. A good fit benefits both. Individuals can find meaning and satisfying work, and organizations can get talent and energy they need to succeed. Usually, the questions that organizations ask is how do they find and retain people with the skills and attitudes to do the work? And for workers, they usually want to know how well will this place work out for them? Those two questions are closely related because fit is a function of at least three different things. It's one, how well an organization responds to individual desire for useful work. Two, how well jobs let employees express their skills and sense of self. Three, how well work fulfills individual financial and lifestyle needs. With human needs, managers make an effort to understand the needs of workers. It's like a flower. Let's say, like a gardener knows that every plant has a specific requirement, different temperatures, soil, and sunlight, and plants do best to get what they need. Humans are like that way, they are very similar compared to a plant. Their conditions or elements in the environment allow people to survive and grow. In work and motivation, there is a formula that is performance equals ability times motivation. Managers and economists say that the primary thing that people only care about is money, and they'll do anything they believe that they can get more of it. So, Hertzberg argued that eccentric factors like working condition and company policies can make people unhappy but don't really motivate them to be more productive. In each model, It develops its own list of things that people want, and no item appears on every list, such as 1. People want things that go beyond money, 2. They want to get better at what they do, and 3. Find meaning and purpose. Things that motivate are intrinsic to the work itself, things like achievement, responsibility, recognition for all the things that are work well done. Psychologist Abraham Maslow started with the notion that people are motivated by the variety of wants. He basically grouped human needs into a 5 basic category and arranged them in a hierarchy from lowest to highest. Basic needs for physical well-being and safety are proponent and they have to be satisfied first. Lower needs are fulfilled and individuals move up to social needs for belonging, love, and inclusion. Ego needs for esteem, respect, and recognition, lastly, is at the top of the hierarchy is self actualization. He believed that such reversals occur when lower needs are well, so they are satisfied early in life, that they are receded into the background later on. Overall, the human resource frame highlights the relationship between people and organizations. Organizations need people for their energy, effort, and talent. Meanwhile, people need organizations for their intrinsic and extrinsic rewards that they offer. When the fit between people and organizations is poor, they can both suffer. Individuals can feel neglected, and organizations feel spurred because of them withdrawing their efforts to work against organizational purposes. So, overall, highly successful organizations have gone into another direction, which is investing in people on the premise, which is a highly motivated and workforce skill that is powerful and a competitive advantage. In Chapter 7 of Reframing Organizations, we talk about improving human resource management. This chapter concludes about individuals finding satisfaction, meaning, and work in the organization, and organizations profiting from the effective use of their talents and energies. When satisfaction and meaning are lacking, individuals can withdraw, resist, or rebel. But progressive organizations implement a variety of high involvement strategies for improving human resource management. This approach strengthens the bond between individuals and organizations by paying well, offering job security, promoting from within, training the workforce, and sharing the fruits of the organizational success. All of this powers workers and give them more significance to participate in jobs, enrichment, training, and diversity. Success typically requires a comprehensive strategy that can lead to long term human resource management philosophy. Ideas and the practices from organization development often play a significant role in supporting the evolution of more comprehensive and effective human resource practices. In Chapter 8, we talk about interpersonal and group dynamics. The chapter begins by describing a woman named Anne Barreto who was excited to become the first woman and the first Hispanic American to be ever promoted to a district marketing manager at Hillcrest. Her boss, Steve, was very supportive of it, and they are responsible for 2 districts in the same city. Harry Reynolds was a 25-year-old man who worked with Hillcrest for 12 years and had a temper that cleared up quickly when someone got in his way. Anne maintained a positive and professional relationship with Harry because she found him condescending and arrogant. One day, Harry, Anne, and Mark were discussing about plans for marketing. Harry and Anne were disagreeing, and Mark tried to support Annie, but Harry kept cutting her off. Mark got frustrated with this and told Harry if he wouldn't listen to anyone besides himself and to think a little before he opens his mouth, then everybody would make a lot of progress. Obviously, Harry got mad about that and stormed out, and later asked Annie to fire Mark. Annie talked to Steve about Mark, and they agreed that they would not fire Mark at all. Harry didn't like that Annie choice and told her that if she wants to get along with him, she needs to fire Mark, and if she doesn't, then she will regret it later on. Well, what happens later is that 3 months pass, and then Steve calls Annie into a meeting. Steve tells Annie about the rumor that has been spreading around about both of them having an affair, and that's how she got the job. The company hired a detective to check it out, and no clues were found, but they know who it was. Obviously, they thought it was Harry. Now, because of this, managers spend much of their time relating to other people in conversation and meeting in groups and committees over coffee, lunch, or on the phone. People bring patterns of behavior to the workplace that they have roots in early life and the socializing effects of family and society that shape them out to be who they are in the workplace. Examples could be like school teachers. They prepare us to learn how to complete assignments and be on time and follow rules. But just because of these things, it doesn't always mean that we are meshed like that when it's also about family as well. People like Anne Beretta could use those three questions that consist of what was happening between her and Harry? Did he really start the rumor? And if so, why and how should she deal with him? Harry represents a person that demands and rejects to fire Mark. He tries to get revenge by throwing a sneak attack on her. So, what should Annie do, or any woman in the circumstances do to confront the situation? Well, if a woman initiates confrontation, then they are risk branded as a troublemaker. So, questions to ask herself is, should she try to sabotage Harry before he gets hurt, or if she does this, will she make everybody lose? This is an example that emphasizes the importance of interpersonal competencies as a basic managerial skills. Manager effectiveness is often impaired because they are over controlling, they ignore feelings, and they're blind to their impact on others. In Model 1 is the core assumption that relationships and organizations are dangerous and you have to look out for yourself. This can lead individuals to follow a predictable set of steps in their attempts to influence others, such as assuming that the problem is caused by the other person or group. For this example, Harry seems to think that Mark and Annie was the cause of his problems, as Mark insulted him and Annie protected Mark. Annie blames Harry for being biased and unreasonable, and both employ a basic assumption at the core of Model 1. They develop a private, unilateral diagnosis and solution. As Harry defines the problem and tells Annie how to solve it, she declines about his solution and he develops another sneakier strategy, which is to undermine Annie. 3. Since the other person is the cause of the problem, you have to get that person to change. How is the facts, logic, and rational persuasion? She has to tell Harry that she is right and why she is right. And indirect influence is asking leading questions and manipulate the other person, having direct critique, telling the other person what they are doing wrong and how they should change that. In this case, Harry moves with logic and then he moves to direct critique. If the diagnosis is correct, then it finally resorts to sabotage. Fourth, if the person resists or becomes defensive, that confirms that the other person is at fault. Since Annie refused to fire Mark, he perceptions of Annie is like an effective troublemaker. So Harry confirms Annie's perception that he is an unreasonable and stubborn, such as she didn't want to fire Mark. The fifth one is response to resistance through some combination of intensifying pressure and protecting or rejecting the other person. When Annie resists, Harry intensifies pressure and Annie tries to soothe Harry without firing Mark. But Harry is not happy about this and concludes that Annie is impossible to deal with. So he thought about sabotagement, and in his head, he may believe that his own rumor is true, and that's why he got Annie promoted. Sixth is if their efforts are less successful, then it is hope for the other person is at fault. Harry does not succeed and getting rid of Mark, and he stains Annie's reputation but also damages his reputation as well. Model 1 assumption is basically minimum learning, strained relationships, and deterioration on decision making. In Model 2, it answers how Annie can help a situation like this. The first is by emphasizing common goals and mutual influence. The second one is communicate openly, publicly test assumptions and beliefs. The third is combine advocacy with inquiry. So, Harry demanded that Annie fire Mark combines a high advocacy with low inquiry. Demands and told her that he wants but doesn't have interest in her point of view. Such behavior tends to be seen as assertive, dominating, or arrogant. Annie's response both low in advocacy and in inquiry. Model 2 counts as that Annie to combine advocacy and inquiry in an open dialogue. Openness carries risk because it's hard to be effective when you are ambient, uncomfortable, or frightened. So, Annie's ability to comfort Harry depends on her self confidence and interpersonal skills. Argyris labeled interpersonal competence back to Thorndike's definition of social intelligence is the ability to understand and management and women, boys, girls to act wisely in human relationships. Emotional intelligence is labeled for skills that include awareness of self and others and the ability to handle emotions and relationships. Individuals who scored relatively high in the ability to perceive accurately, understand, and appraise other emotions could respond more flexibility to changes in their social environment. They are able to build support social networks, and both interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence are vital because personal relationships are a central element in an everyday life. Improving efforts fail because managers are sometimes unable to handle the social challenges of change. Daniel Goldman made his best selling book, Emotional Intelligence, to focus on children and education than on work. It basically aimed at helping people improve their emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, rather than intellectual abilities, accounts for most of the variance in effectiveness among managers, particularly at a senior level. So, primary leadership defined four dimensions of emotional intelligence as two are internal and two are external. The two that are internal are self awareness and self management, and the two external are social awareness and relationship management. Self awareness includes the awareness of one's feelings or impacts on others, and self management includes a number of positive psychological characters, among them emotional self control and adaptability, drive for achievement, initiative, and optimism. Social awareness includes empathy and feelings of others. Organizational awareness is sensitivity to the importance of relationships and commitment to service. Relationship management includes inspiration, influence, developing others, change, managing conflict, and teamwork. Now, why is emotional intelligence important than suggesting practical ideas? Well, the ideas of multiple forms of intelligence was developed earlier by Howard Gardner and Robert Stenberg. The dimensions of those intelligence is the primal leadership of teamwork that could have been into the form of leadership in recent decades, which offered many ways to think about relative importance of intellectual and social skills, arguing that managers with high IQ but low emotional intelligence are a very bad and dangerous thing to themselves and others. Overall, both individual satisfaction and organizational effectiveness depend heavily on the quality of interpersonal relationships and team dynamics. An individual's social skills are competencies and are a critical element in the effectiveness of relationships at work. People frequently employ theory in use that emphasizes self protection and control of others. Greece developed an alternative model build that values of mutually and learning. And Salovey and Mayer and Goldman underscore the importance of emotional intelligence and the ability to handle emotions and relationships. Groups can be satisfying and efficient, but organizing cannot function without them. So managers need to understand that groups are always operating in two levels, task and then process. Both levels need to be considered if groups are to be effective, and among the significant process of issues that groups have to manage are informal roles, group norms, interpersonal conflicts, and leadership. Here we have explained on chapters 3 to 8 on reframing organizations. We talked about the main topics, which is the structural and human resources frame, and provided some examples. This is important to me because being able to understand how to restructure or structure an organization can help me figure out where I stand in my organization. Not only that, but it helps me understand that human resources are very important in an organization because they require our health and to make us feel good. If we don't have these things, it can lead to a bad thing for an organization because it can lead workers to feel like they are not cared for, especially for different workers like immigrants and so on. This is my presentation on structural and human resources, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.